option. Because we want them to do that. Well, she does, she told me, but we have to.
Change all my things I did not get.
Well, but she might, we might not keep somebody like that.
That's usually when I just forget to carry it over. I'm like,
And we've actually, that's past practice, like, well, there was a math teacher that both East Shore and West Shore wanted. And they chose West Shore. And the next summer, this summer, there was another teacher, and they chose East Shore, so it always works out. Yeah. But then that way, I think she made that person.
Technically, I took today off
To chair.
to do back to school. Shopping, back to school shopping, non-nutrition stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I can suggest that we offer to the new hire.
So I only worked for an hour and a half this afternoon.
Good.
I was like, you know what? You're gonna see all of this time tomorrow.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to do what you do without too much else.
And not making it stressful for
That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's what it's fun thing.
Driving me nuts.
I know, exactly.
I'm not going.
When they're up on the screen, they're only
Here, yeah. To do with that information as you will.
Well, it's just.
I know, sometimes we get to it in 30 seconds, sometimes we get to it in 5 minutes, just whatever. Just throwing it out there.
No.
I was looking for her brother, I didn't know she lived on this street.
Oh, my goodness.
But
Oh, just first one?
Yeah, the extending school year.
that's cool.
Yes.
We did much better in Ireland than we did in Italy. My husband's family, that was the hardest.
Page
They
50.
were really tiny villages. What part of Italy? He is hard. What do you think? Okay. Yeah, his boat is, I was on the side.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:01. We could please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Griffin?
Megan Doyle.
Here.
Scott Furmender.
Present.
Tracy Irby. Here. Thomas Koba.
Here.
Lauren Maller.
Here.
Una Petrowski.
Here.
Christina Preet. Here. Michael Smith.
Mr. Smith is ill, so he's absent. He's excused.
Cindy Wolf Boynton.
Here.
And Susan Glennon.
Here.
9 members present.
Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is public comment statement. I'll read the public comment statement before we proceed. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with Milford Public Schools. Security issues and matters relating to negotiations and grievances will not be permitted. Consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, discussion of students is prohibited absent parental waiver. Public comment does not allow for two-way conversation between speakers and the board. We welcome and appreciate your comments and opinions and will take all into consideration. Please note our meetings are televised and live streamed on YouTube. We ask that you state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And just one additional note before we start public comment, I just wanted to give everyone a reminder that since it's been a while since our last meeting, at our business meeting, which is the first meeting of the month, members of the public can comment on any topic related to our schools, but public comment is limited to agenda items only at our committee of the whole meetings, which are typically the second meeting of the month. So tonight is a business meeting. And is there anybody in the audience who'd like to address us for public comment?
So I'm here to talk about a recent email that I sent to all of the Board of Ed members at the end of last year about the additional professional learning days that were added to the calendar in the last year. Asking to, I think that's part of your discussion tonight, just asking to reconsider from a parent's point of view. So these days were added, another in January and another in February. And so while I support having PD once per month, as it's always been for 10, 15 years or whatever, these additional days come at a time where we're just off the holidays. There's high instances of winter inclement weather. And most importantly, it's taking away academic time between the student and the teacher. And the one thing that I know that I learned through COVID was that the most important thing we can do is keep our students in their classroom with their teachers. These PD days, it shortens math. It shortens art, which is my daughter's very saddest moment. It shortens every part of their day in order to accommodate time for teachers to have that professional learning. So I would really like the district to think about what's important. And I think what's important here for my children is that they have as much time as possible with their students in the classrooms. In addition to PD days being away from their kids, teachers are pulled out of the classroom a lot. I hear this from the kids. They're constantly pulled for meetings, IEP meetings and 504 meetings, with all kinds of meetings throughout just a regular school day. So what I'm asking the board to do is to protect our children's time and value that as much as we value coaching our teachers. We put much more coaches into the schools, and that is, I think, kind of real-time work with them. So I think once a month is sufficient, or should be sufficient, if you have that 9 times throughout the year. Following January and February, we get to March, which in the elementary school means a full day PD, and then 3 additional half days. So literally from January to April, very few full days of the week. And I talked to my teacher last year about it too, and you know, he understands that the change in the structure and that is disruptive for his students. So I'm asking that those days moving forward, if obviously not for this year, maybe it's a little further out, if not for this year, in the future can be considered, so that we are putting more value on our students' time with their teachers in the classrooms. Thank you.
Can we have your name and record, name and address for the record?
Lynch is 6 Dogwood Place.
And just for the record, we are not talking about the academic calendar tonight, we're talking about professional development.
Correct.
So we will take that all into consideration. Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board this evening for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Thank you for your feedback, Liz. Chair's report. So welcome back from the summer break, board members. Just a reminder that we go back to our normal board meeting schedule now with the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month, barring any holidays. So please try to check your email, your board email regularly to stay on top of any important information. At our September 9th business meeting, we will have the facilities condition assessment report that was commissioned last spring. Please make a note that the meeting will be held at Jonathan Law High School in the auditorium, still at 7 p.m. And information will be going out, hopefully this week, to families and the larger audience about that meeting. The hope is that that will be a springboard for the board's work on developing a long-range plan for our facilities, so more information will come. Convocation is being held tomorrow morning, promptly at 8:15 a.m., also at Jonathan Law in the auditorium. Coffee is at 7:30 if you're inclined to be there at that time or in between. You all received an information and an update, so please plan, so if you do plan to attend, please make sure to let Pam know tonight if you have not already done so. Convocation celebrates the official start to a new school year. Students return on Wednesday, and I'm sure everybody is ready and anticipating a great year. We are wishing everybody good luck. So with that, I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Kataya for the superintendent's report. Oh, I'm sorry, liaison reports. We have liaison reports.
I'll go.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. So reporting back from the Permanent Schools Committee meeting, and so busy summer, and Pumpkin Delight should be available, ready to go on Wednesday for all the students.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will. I will say, when we went last week, it looked much better. Just needed a good cleaning. So it looks amazing. It's great to see the renovation, and look forward to seeing everyone there in the next school year. And we also chose an architect for the law and foreign projects that will be moving forward, and we will see what happens as we'll keep you progressed as we get more information on that process as we go forward.
Any other liaison reports at this point? Okay, seeing none. Now Dr. Kataja.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon and members of the Board of Ed. Officially welcoming everyone back this evening from the summer. And yes, we are so ready for young people to walk through our doors of our schools and our classrooms. So we're really excited. With that, we have a very full agenda for this evening. So I'm going to quickly turn things over to Mr. Brennan to kick things off with the consideration and request for approval of the MASA contract for the 25 through 28 school years.
Great, thank you, Dr. Kataja, Ms. Glennon, members of the board. So as Dr. Kataja mentioned, we are looking for approval for this most recent contract negotiation with the Milford Association of School Administrators, otherwise known as MASA. Their contract is expiring in June 30th, 2025, and as is common, we would negotiate ahead of that. So we began negotiations under the direction of Floyd Dugas and our negotiating team on May 14th, 2024, and we reached a settlement agreement on July 31st, 2024. At this time, we are asking for the approval of the agreement between Milford Board of Education and the Milford Association of School Administrators for a contract that begins on July 1st, 2025 and goes through July 30th, 2028.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Do you have a
June 30th.
June 9th.
motion,
June
Ms.
30th.
Petrosky?
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the settlement agreement between the Milford Board of Education and the Milford Association of School Administrators for the period commencing July 1, 2025 through and including June 30th, 2028.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Second by Mr. Fermender. Is there any comment? I was glad to see that it seemed to have been a fairly smooth process and that agreement was found without having to go to arbitration. Good job.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Dugas.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dugas.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you then.
In 3 years.
Yeah.
Next item is introduction of new administrators. So grateful to be introducing to you some new team members that rounds out primarily our Department of Pupil Personnel Services. And we'll go in alphabetical order. First, I'd like to introduce Sarah Collette, our Special Education Supervisor for middle school. Sarah, yeah, there you go, thank you. Sarah comes to us from with 16 years of service behind her in her journey in education. Sarah earned a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education and special education from the University of Hartford in 2008. She continued her studies at the University of St. Joe's in West Hartford and received a Master of Science degree in 2014. And then in 2017, went back to earn her 092 in educational leadership through Quinnipiac University. Sarah's entire career has been really focused on special education and as a teacher in East Haven Public Schools starting in 2008. In the middle of the 15-16 school year, Sarah was elevated to the position of acting elementary special education supervisor in East Haven schools. She also served in that position as the birth to 3 coordinator for the district and developed the district's play-based assessment model to determine eligibility for pre-K special ed services. So you see, as a middle school person, has a great extensive elementary background, which we believe makes for a great transition to the middle school years. In 2022, Sarah was once again promoted, and this time as the special education coordinator and supervisor for the entire school district in East Haven. Sarah managed and served educational programming for more than 250 students with special needs. An important feature of her tenure in East Haven was the coordination and facilitation of targeted professional development for the betterment of the department and ultimately the school district. We knew Sarah was our person when all throughout the process she really demonstrated a relationships-forward approach to working with young people, staff, and families. Welcome, Sarah. It's okay to clap? Yeah. So I am happy to introduce to you Dr. Andrew Deacon, who is assuming officially the first day today the role of Supervisor of Student Development and Academic Success for our district. Andrew comes to us with 15 years in the field of education. He received his education at Manhattanville College, where he earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in Art History with a minor in French in 2008. He then went on to earn 3 degrees from the University of Bridgeport, a master's degree, a 6-year degree, and ultimately a doctor in educational leadership. Andrew began his career in 2008 as a French and Spanish teacher at Foreman School, and we didn't ask him to do any of that during the interview process. I regret that part. Say something in French and Spanish. After completing his master's degree, he taught at the elementary level for 4 years at Colebrook Consolidated School and Torringford School. While at Torrington Public Schools, Andrew held several positions: numeracy coach and interventionist, literacy specialist, assistant principal, and most recently, the director of intervention and academic support, particularly in grades K through 5. In his role, Andrew led teams of educators in the development of equitable and accessible curricula, constructed a comprehensive and coherent district improvement plan that focused on bolstering student outcomes, developed and implemented a robust multi-tiered system of support to meet the needs of individual students, and initiated a student-centered coaching model. We knew Andrew was our guy, was the administrator, the leader for this position, where in every answer there was a heartfelt response that truly, truly demonstrated his heart for all learners. And so we're just so grateful, Andrew, that you've joined our team today. And congratulations and welcome to Kimberly Dunn, the high school special ed supervisor for Milford Public Schools. Kim, it's okay to call you Kim. Yes, I don't. Kim comes to us with 15 years of experience in special education, particularly in the Madison Public Schools. Kim earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in history from Southern Connecticut State University in 2006, and she began her career in education, where she earned a Master of Science degree in special education, followed by an additional certification in educational leadership, also at Southern. Beginning as a homebound tutor for Platte Regional Tech School, Kim spent a year working with students having unique learning needs. In 2007, she began a 2-year stint as a paraeducator, gaining hands-on training in the classroom at Daniel Hand High School in Madison. Well, it was that experience that would confirm for her that working with students with special needs was her calling. And she was hired as a special education teacher at that school in 2009. Kim served the Daniel Hand High School community for the 13 years thereafter. During that period, Kim helped develop the post-secondary 18 to 21-year-old program for Madison Public Schools. She also was involved in a variety of professional development activities, delivering presentations and facilitating learning for her colleagues. Beginning in 2022, Kim was promoted to the role of Special Education Program Coordinator, and she directed a department of 10 special ed teachers and 10 paraeducators. We knew Kim was the leader that we wanted on our team because she really demonstrated in all of her answers and exuded this desire to ensure that learning was personalized for all young people. And that's what she brings to our team, and we're so grateful to have you, Kim. And finally, welcome to Nadine Macklin, our elementary special education supervisor for Milford Public Schools. Nadine comes to us with 22 years of professional experience at every level of our field and in many positions, including special ed teacher, coach, a compliance administrator, and district level administrator. Nadine earned her Bachelor of Science degree in English and Education from the University of Connecticut in 2001. She immediately followed her undergrad work with a Master of Arts degree in Special Ed, also from UConn, only a year later. Nadine later earned her 092 certificate from Sacred Heart University in 2010. Nadine began her career as a special ed teacher and inclusion facilitator in the Stamford Public School District in 2002. It was a role that provided her with deep experience in special education for the next 8 years. Her work included the development of curricular modifications, accommodations, and strategies for her students. In 2010, the Stanford Public Schools promoted Nadine to the role of Individual Learning Needs Coach, a position requiring her to go deep into the data portion of special education. She collected, analyzed, and presented student data and achievement to teachers. And while in that role, Nadine served on the school data team and used her expertise to support the school improvement plan. After serving in Stanford, Nadine was once again promoted to the role of elementary IEP compliance for the district, where she was able to hone in on the special needs of children at the elementary level for those 3 years that followed. In 2016, Nadine decided to make a change and accepted the role of supervisor of pupil personnel services on the other side of the state in Groton Public School District. And for the last 8 years, Nadine served Groton students with special needs using her expertise in the educational arena. She supervised 9 preschool, pre-K classrooms in the district. She served as a superintendent's liaison and co-chair of the education work group for the local school readiness council. We knew Nadine was the leader to join our team because she had such an eye and focus on student-centered approaches, knowing that she had so many experiences and could see the work from so many lenses, knowing that she would bring that value to the planning team for all of our children. So welcome, Nadine. And similar to when we have student liaisons here, I'm going to excuse our administrators to go home and do their homework because it's an early start tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
And at this time, I'd like to turn things over to Eileen Faustich, our Director of Food Services, to provide us with the year-end report in the Food Service Department.
Good evening. I'm here to give you a brief review of our program for just the financial review of the program. We had a good year. Participation was up in breakfast by 38%. We served about 1,100 students a day for breakfast. Participation was a little bit down in lunch. We served about 2,600 students a day. This past year, we had free breakfast at no charge for all students. But we went back to the paying model where families pay for students for all meal categories for paying meals. Free and reduced, always got free, and reduced paid a small amount for their meals. This coming year, we're going to be going almost completely back to the paying model. There's free breakfast only for those who qualify for free or reduced price meals. That's for breakfast and for lunch. Students that don't qualify families that don't qualify for that, I should say, they would be paying the full meal price. So we ended this year with a planned deficit of $241,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but what we did was we knew we were going to spend money this year because we had accumulated a surplus from prior years. If you look at last year, the prior year, like from 22-23, we ended with a balance of almost $400,000. So this year we ended with a negative $241,000. And what we did was we spent primarily, we spent the money on equipment to replace old equipment. For example, we replaced the warmers and coolers at Warren High School that were the original from the early 70s, which it's pretty impressive that they lasted as long as they did. But so that we replaced those things, those items. There was 4 of those. We replaced deli serving lines at Foreign Law, Harborside, West Shore. We purchased pass-through open-air display coolers for the serving lines at Foreign and Law. Law, we received a grant of $25,000 to do that. And we purchased a serving line for Live Oaks. So that was almost $200,000. So I think we did pretty well this year. We anticipate doing well next year. We also might have a planned deficit next year, but I didn't want to increase the lunch prices for this coming year because I thought it would negatively impact our participation. So we're looking forward to the new school year. We are opening up the new kitchen at Pumpkin Delight School. Thank you very much. And we're looking forward to the new school year. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Irby?
So then is there still a carryover amount for this upcoming year? Of like
Yes, we still have money that we can move forward that would cover any deficit that we would have, but we are planning to use the money to replace equipment and so forth.
Is that about $150,000?
Is it about $150,000? We probably have more than that.
Okay.
So when you say planned, I'm sorry, when you say planned deficit, your intent is, I mean, the money, the deficit will be covered by?
Yes, the deficit will be covered. With our program, we are a nonprofit. We can keep 3 months operating expenses, and anything more than that, we put back into the program. So we don't, we don't increase prices if we don't have to, and everything we earn goes back into the program.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Ms. Irby, do you have anything else? Any other questions?
Let me just,
Yes, Ms. Doyle?
thank you. I know we discussed this last time, but it always helps to qualify, because the operating expense for a month is usually about 250,000 or 135. What's your usual operating expense for a month?
Let's see, it ranges from between $200,000 and $300,000 a month.
Okay, so that's how we got to the, like, you can have anywhere between $600,000 and $900,000 in
Yes.
operating in reserve
Mhm.
and carry forward, because I know we had discussed this with federal programs providing a lot of money and input and things like that. And then the last question I have, which Sean might have a better answer for this. The new kitchen at Pumpkin came out of the budget for the addition, not your budget, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That is a permanent facilities project.
Just
That
double
we
checking.
are not allowed to spend our money on permanent facilities.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Great, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Faustich.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank
Glennon,
you.
if I may have a minute.
Yes.
Just wanted to publicly thank Mrs. Faustich and her team for all the work that they do to feed our students on a day in and day out basis. I know that they've done a lot of work this summer getting ready for the new year, and we much appreciate everything you do for our students on a daily basis, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. A very important question, will the smoothie be back? I'm asking for the people, all right? I'm asking for the people.
Absolutely.
Excellent, the
It will.
smoothie will be back.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Faustin.
Thank you.
Next item under the superintendent's report, board members, we are always grateful when we can work closely with our partners in this great community and have experienced a long-standing relationship with the Milford Prevention Council. Grateful for the leadership that Wendy Gibbons has demonstrated and through an example of being someone that is so easy to work with and just, it's all about the kids. It's all about our young people. That's what I always walk away with in my head when I'm working with Wendy. So welcome to Wendy and team. I'll let her do other introductions if that's okay. Miss Wendy Gibbons with the Milford Prevention Council here to share the youth survey results with
Thank you,
us.
I appreciate it. It's so nice to look in front of me and see some very, very familiar faces from many years, through many years of working together, and some nice new faces. So thank you for giving us this opportunity. Just to do a very brief backstory, we have been collaborating with the Milford Public School System since about 2009 with programs as well as data collection. So what our lead epidemiologist, Essie, is going to present tonight is we've been doing a biannual school survey since 2009. We survey 7th, 9th, and 11th graders. We do it every 2 years. So we have an incredible amount of longitudinal data, and all the data that we collect drives the work that we do to support your youth in the school system. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Essie.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Once again, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. A.C. Ambayewe. I'm an epidemiologist with Bridget Healthcare. I cover Milford Prevention Council, West Haven Prevention Council, and ODA, that's the Bethany Orange and Woodbridge Prevention Council. So today I'm here to share results of our recent Milford Youth Survey. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the Milford Board of Education for allowing us to survey the students, and thank you to all the parents that gave their consent. So I'll just go right into it. So first of all, the survey method we used the survey was administered online in English during school hours. We used SPSS to tabulate the result of the data. The objective of the survey was to describe the nature and the extent of substance use behavior or other risky behaviors among our youth in 7th, 9th, and 11th grade, and also to monitor trends in substance use behavior, and all these aid in planning of strategies, activities, and training for youth, parents, and the Milford community at large. So for the demographics information, we had a total of 925 students. Of this number, we had just 852 that were selected due to sampling of the population, either blank surveys or incomplete surveys, all those were excluded. So our demographics showed for 7th grade we had 312, 9th grade 303, and 11th grade 239. Race ethnicity, we can see the majority of students identified as white or Caucasians as 58%, followed by Hispanic and Latinos, which was 16, and then Asian American 11. Percentage of students that identified as other race and ethnic group, we noticed a positive increase in the number of students that are self-identified as other racial, ethnic, and ethnic group, either due to more students being more identifying where they're from or a changing population dynamics. Next, we analyze the gender identity and the LGBT group. We see for male and female, male 47%, female 49%, and then we had about 8% that identified as LGBT. Of the LGBT group, we see a breakdown: 66% white, 12% Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, 21%. Next, mental health. So we introduced questions to give us a snapshot into various sources of stress among youths in Milford. And based on that, we highlighted academics showed higher source of stress. You can see 7, 9, and 11 for between 20. So we compare 2022 to 2024, and we see an increase in the number of students reporting stress from academics. That was the most, and then college planning, and then expectation of the future. Those were the three that presented high level of stress among our youth. Next, we assessed depression and suicidality. So we asked questions to assess sources of persistent feeling of sadness or hopelessness that affects students' ability to perform during the school hours. We included 3 new questions on suicidal thoughts, seriously considering suicide, or making plans, or attempting suicide. And you can see for feeling, student reporting, I felt sad or hopeless so much that it stopped me from doing my usual activities. For 7th grade, we see 25, 9th graders reported 18%, and 11th, 23%. We also see high numbers were noted more among the 7th graders. High numbers noted more among the 7th graders for all indicators that we use to assess depression and suicidality. Next, we assessed level of depression by race and ethnicity. We see high numbers also among the Blacks and African American, Hispanic, Latinos, and the Asian American recorded high numbers of feeling depressed compared to other races. For mental health, based on sex and LGBT+, we see high numbers we compared 2022 data to 2024 data. It showed us a majority of students reported high level of reported yes to feeling sad and hopeless majority of students in 2020 reported high level of feeling sad and hopeless compared to 2024. So we see a decline in the number of LGBT plus community that are reporting feeling sad and hopelessness. We also saw a decline in the number of students reporting attempted suicide and feeling of hurting themselves. Assessing community and school, we asked students questions. So 27% of Milford youth spent a significant amount of time on the screen for non-school related activities compared to 14% of students dedicating the same amount of time to school work. 64% of Milford youth come home to an empty house after school, while 13% are alone for greater than 4 hours. Although 57% of youth reported feeling connected to adults in the school, only 23% of these youth reported that they will seek help from them if they felt sad, hopeless, or depressed, or worried. And then 90% of Milford youth do not feel that they have the ability to deal with frustration and disappointment. Addressing this question was just recently added, assessing toxic stress. We used different indicators, housing and food insecurity, discrimination, and being victim of violence. And as you can see from the data, we have high numbers in the Black and Hispanic community, reporting high level of feeling, high level of discrimination, being victim of violence, and high level of food insecurity. Now going to the main, this way,
Excuse me. Oh, sorry. Thank
we
you.
assess the lifetime use, the prevalence of substance use among our youth. And as you can see, alcohol seems to be the highest lifetime and past 30-day use percentage compared to other substances that we access. Next was vaping or e-cigarette use with nicotine, and followed by use of marijuana. For trends over time, this data compares the reported usage rate of various substances across the different years. So we assessed 2017, 2022, and 2024. We can see high numbers reported in 2017 of almost all the substances that we assessed. And then we see a decline in 2022, and then in 2024, more decline. But if you can look at alcohol seems to have almost the same amount of use rate for 2022 and 2024, which also goes with our previous data that most students are probably using alcohol in school. We asked the students how easy was it for them to assess each of these substances, and from the data you can see that for alcohol also shows a high number, followed by nicotine vape, and then use of marijuana. Where do students get the substance from? A lot of our students reported they get their substance from their parents with their permission, parents without their permission, from their friends, and at the party with an adult's permission. If you can see the data, you see alcohol has the highest source of substance use and the highest source of access to using to substances. Sorry. We assess the perception of harm over time for the time period of 2017 to 2024. We can also see a decline in the amount of students reporting perception of harm. So we asked different questions of how harmful they feel this substance is to them. And you can see 2017, they had a lot of students reported that, yes, there's high risk associated with substance use. But you can see as we go down 2022 and 2024, you can see that students perceive substance to be, there's less perception of harm as we go down from 2017 to 2024. So that's the perception. And then other risky behavior. We asked these questions in the past 12 months. The amount of student reporting gets to, I stole something less than $100, cheating on the test. You can see high numbers for riding as a passenger with a driver under the influence of alcohol. For 2024, we had 5% for 2024 and 8% for our 9th and 11th graders. 5% and 8%. Also, texting while driving, we see 2% for 9th graders, 10% for 11th graders. Online safety and percentage of youth reporting, yes. As students progress from 7th to 11th graders, a notable increase in engaging with strangers online, from initiating conversations to more risky behavior such as sending personal pictures and meeting up with a person that they have never seen before. So we see high numbers associated with these behaviors. And we access bullying behaviors. The most common form of bullying was being left out or excluded or ignored. And then experiencing verbal abuse through name calling or comments also showed high numbers among all the grades. And for family norms, we asked the students if among the steps taken by their parents to avoid access to some of the substances. And you can see for the first one, the 92% of students reported that their parents indeed take steps to ensure that underage youth cannot get alcohol from their houses. And then compared to 82% that says they take steps to ensure that underage youth do not drink alcohol in their house. But if you see our previous slide, most of our students, the perception of harm decreased across the year. Well, yes, the parents have steps to ensure that the students are not using alcohol, but their perception of harm is decreasing. So that showed like there was a discord in the data there. And you can see in the next slide for parental rules on substances and other behavior. For both parental disapproval and clear rules, the percentage are generally consistent across all grades. So yes, there's parent disapprove and there are clear rules, but it seems like our kids are still using substance and are not reporting accurately from what the data says. So only if the parents disapprove and there are clear rules concerning substance use. For rules on other substances and other behaviors, you can see here, I just want to focus on the amount of time spent playing video games and social media use. You can compare to gambling behavior and communication with others. You see the amount of time students spend playing video games, there are no rules and, there are less rules compared to other substances and other behavior. And that's it. Questions?
Questions on this report? Ms. Boynton?
So what do these numbers mean? Like, what's the greater context of these numbers? What do they say? What's like the story that tells us of what's happening here in Milford and comparing it to other towns?
So from what the data is saying, we see a lot of students are reporting mental health issues, depression, suicidality. They feel sad, they feel hot. Even at school, when they feel they have an issue, they don't report. They don't have anybody to. They report less to the people that they feel they are more connected to. That's for mental health. And then for the substance use behavior, we see most of our youths tend to use more of alcohol and vaping, nicotine vapes, and then marijuana.
But how does that, I mean, these numbers, like, let's put them in context, right? Are they saying that in Milford, we're in good shape? That we have a problem? That, and is whatever is happening in Milford, how does that compare to other towns?
It's, so from the data, it shows that there's definitely a problem in the schools. The amount of, I feel the amount of, from what the data is showing, the use rates and from the amount of people that we have some focus group that we interviewed some of the school personnel. And what the kids are reporting is not in line with what the data is saying. So we're seeing more of use of substances.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm the program coordinator for the Milford Prevention Council. So what we're finding is that compared to other towns in Connecticut, we're in good shape. About 2% of our students use some type of substance as a coping strategy, most likely for anxiety or stress. The problem is that the 2% that do use actually use a lot, and they're not necessarily the students that are seeking out help. Another thing that we noted was that as early as 7th grade, kids are reporting significant mental health concerns and questions and suicidal ideation. And what happens if we don't catch them at that time, they go on to find other ways to handle it. We're not teaching them proper coping strategies. In the data, 19% of students said they did not feel that they can handle disappointment. And so that's how these numbers kind of come together. Does that answer, is that the question you were looking for?
It's kind of, I mean, but how does that compare, how do these numbers compare to other cities?
So like West Haven is always a little bit higher as far, I think they're 2 times higher as far as marijuana use. Cannabis is higher in West Haven. Orange, the numbers were very small, so we can't really compare because they didn't really answer a lot of the questions. Compared to the state, I believe the state substance use, and I can't remember which, like, I'm gonna put them all together, is about 32% of high school students report some substance use, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or cannabis. So like I said, Milford, we are doing very well, but 2% is still a great amount of our student population, because we have a big population.
So and I am a total layperson, right? So, I mean, 2 of the big takeaways that I get from this report is, one, our students are sorely lacking in resilience, right? And resilience skills seem to be something that they need to learn. But I also look at this, and I could be wrong, but I look at this and say, there needs to be some parent education going on. So I'm just wondering, like, so we have these numbers, so now what do we do with this information?
And that brings up a great point, and that's something that I think our partnership is going to start to even explore a bit more, because 20% of parents in Milford don't think that drinking alcohol underage is a huge problem. They think it's a rite of passage. But they start one place, and when that doesn't give them the feelings that they need, they have to go further. Perception of harm in students is going down. They know that it's bad for them, but knowing exactly why and what it can lead to, they don't know, so they don't understand what they're doing when they're using these substances for coping. So there is definitely more education that needs to be done with parents. I think the health classes do a great job, and the social workers in the school, but there's so much that still needs to be done. So our numbers are good, yay, but we still have a ways to go, especially with the students that are most in danger of using substances, the ones that don't come from help, and those are the ones we really need to watch out for.
And so does, and I'm sorry I don't know this, but does the Prevention Council then work with our health teachers to establish some kind of programming?
It depends on the school. A lot of times we work, in the high schools, we work with the dean of students, and we do a freshman forum every year and a senior university, and they give us the topics that they want. We also bring in speakers based on what they ask us for the students based on what they're seeing in their schools and what's needed. Last year's freshman forum, we definitely addressed alcohol concerns. We also had an excellent speaker on vaping and a mental health speaker. It's the younger grades that, we're finding that we're not as involved in, and that they're needing maybe a little bit more support. And I think that there's been a lot of hiring too to kind of help make sure that we're addressing all those issues. But we have a lot of resources if, and when schools need them, they ask us for them.
Thank you.
Ms. Preet?
I think this is directed towards Wendy, just having done this for so many years. What stood out to you? What are you worried about? I think I'm worried about the 7th graders.
Yes.
And I think we also talked about trying to get even more in parents' ears, and we talked about maybe the PTA meetings, even though, because at least you have a captive audience, especially around the vaping, not only with the nicotine, but also now with the bits and allowable THC, which is not catching up. We've talked about that as well. So what's standing out to you with your history?
So if I have to think back from 2000, I've been here since 2009. I've seen every single biannual school survey. I think we've been doing a tremendous job of addressing alcohol. Yes, I think that has been something that's been very successful in programming. What I am concerned most about is the mental health and anxiety and stress. That has gone up significantly, also past, post-COVID, obviously. But that would be where my gut concern, really, and marijuana and sort of that perception of harm. It's been difficult to reach to parents. The second layer of this is another conversation with Dr. Kaitaya and really pulling apart some of this data that we would like to look at and say, now what do we do? Now what's the next level? What's the next programming? What can we do to reach these things? And that's what's sort of stage 2 after this presentation is going to go back. This is an extensive document too. This is a humongous survey. The SE had 15 minutes to present what we thought was, so we're going to do a deeper dive and do a little more analyzation, and we have all the raw data and to be able to further answer that question.
And what we can do to support, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Mahler?
So, to the question of big picture and context and threads that are throughout here, two things that stand out to me, and tell me if I'm reading this correctly, that it's a survey you do every other year. So in here, the 9th graders were the 7th graders in 2022, and the 11th graders were the 9th graders in 2022. So we can actually see year over year what is happening to that specific cohort.
Yes.
And if I'm looking at this and I'm lining it up as a parent of a child who was in kindergarten for COVID, that is a lens for all of this, because the entire world, as we all know, turned upside down, particularly for our kids, and we've been dealing with that a lot, and I think very well at those younger groups as they get older, and we see how that impacted them and how that impact has just simply expanded over time, how it's just taken on exponential change. So when I look at this, what I see is that the 9th graders were in a pivotal 5th grade year when COVID shut them down. And we see what happened to them in 7th grade when they took the survey in 2022 and how that has changed for the survey that they took in 2024. And the numbers that you're pointing out, the stress and the anxiety, there are significant increases in the percentages from that same cohort when they were in 7th grade, which was possibly, if I'm doing my math correctly, the first year that they were back to actual full-time school after the shutdown year of COVID, the weirdo year we had after that, and then a full-time welcome to 7th grade here, try not to be stressed. You're around humans again, try not to be anxious. Oh, by the way, it's 7th grade, which is pretty anxiety-inducing anyway for anyone in it or out of it. And that hasn't changed over the years. But there are numbers to those who were very directly impacted year after year that we see growing. And I totally fully appreciate it. I saw SPSS and I had some shudders from like 20-year past previous experience and knowing the depth and the complexity of what you're chewing through to get to this. I would be very curious in seeing that additional layer of analysis, particularly that compares the 22 and the 24 to see where that group of kids in the 9th and 11th have moved over time, because the slide that in addition to the stress and anxiety slide, which does show the 22 to 24 and those significant increases and puts that data to them, we can't see that on this particular slide for the depression and the suicidality. We only can see the 24s, so I'd be curious to see how, and those are very significant numbers in here as well, but I'd be curious to see how they have potentially changed since 22 for those same two cohorts over time, because I think that's where we are starting to see our first glimpses, and obviously you do this all the time, so it's not your first glimpse, but the first glimpse for us to be able to see data at this level that is broken down to a layer that allows us to really track changes in what is happening to our kids over time. It's not just, oh wait, maybe you missed the unit where you learned how to tell time and count money. We'll catch you up in first grade. It's a little bit different than that, particularly with some of these bigger kids. So as you get to that next level and you are sharing that, I would ask that you share that with us too, that we can see that level of, I don't want to see your crosstabs. I have no interest in that. But being able to see your comparison data and the not necessarily the methodology piece behind it, but the analysis that goes into how do we pull those threads and how do we connect those dots in a way that gives us that accurate big picture rather than just, we think this is what's happening, that number looks like it's what's happening, but I bet you have more that shows what really is. So I would request that. Thank you.
Ms. Petrosky?
First, I just want to say thank you for sharing the results because I think this is really important information and you guys do great work, so thank you for that. My question is, there's always this, well, I don't want to say always, but I hear anecdotal, oh, you know, kids are starting these things younger every year. Was there an opportunity or an idea floating around that maybe we start the survey a little bit earlier and maybe fifth graders, or is that something that just doesn't make sense for this type of
So
survey?
as I'm sitting here and was listening to your conference, you speak, I was like, you know what, I wonder, why aren't we maybe doing a elementary school age survey? And I think that's a bigger conversation for me so 7th, 9th, and 11th is the standard, right, for all surveys in the national level, most likely. So I'm gonna bring that question back to our federal funding sources and see if there's something that has been done at a younger level, and perhaps I mean, we've never done it, but I think it's not out of the realm to.
Great.
For comparison's sake, the COVID kindergartners are about to be fifth graders.
Right, well, that's what I was just thinking.
If you're following where that line
We need
moves,
to do
as a
5th,
Wednesday.
7th, 9th, and 11th,
Yeah.
Because this survey originally we were using a national survey and it was focused really on substance. But here in Milford, we were given the opportunity to be more creative with our survey. And so every year we relook at our questions. For example, the kids don't call it e-cigarettes, they call it vaping. So we stopped calling it e-cigarettes. And we started putting COVID questions in, and then we started putting stress and anxiety. So we were always growing and going with the trends and sort of readapting to what we are seeing on a national level too, as well as what we're seeing amongst our youth. So, so like I said, we can do any deeper dive you'd like, so thank you for that. And I will look into if it's a possibility of doing on a younger grade. I don't know if there's some sort of are fifth graders even
Capable of answering those
Yeah,
questions effectively.
yeah, I
I
don't
have to
know.
modify the survey because it is pretty extensive. But yeah, something we can definitely look at because personally, we would love to have it.
It's really interesting information. I think it's very valuable as well to really get a pulse for what's going on with our kids so that we know how, what they need for supports. And some of those statistics were a little alarming.
Yes, I would agree.
So thank you for the great work.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you for the presentation. Just coming back to that survey administration, how were the students chosen? What schools, what kind of demographics how is that, the students that took the survey, how is that done? I know it says in class time, what cohorts?
I could answer that question. It's every 7th, 9th, and 11th grader, and there is a reverse permission slip that goes out, that if a parent gets the permission slip and they don't return it, then it's every child in that grade.
Okay.
So I don't know how many opt-outs, do you have that number by any chance? It's always really pretty low. It's usually based on a learning disability or language. So those are usually the two reasons that if someone is not partaking in the survey, but there have always been very low numbers.
And so you're capturing almost all the students in each grade that are there with a certain number that are kind of cut out because they're incompletes or from there.
Right.
So you are following the same cohorts and just,
Yes.
there is no sampling distortion based on which elementary schools are covered or things like that. Just a broader question, the Prevention Council, is it just drugs?
No.
Okay.
So again, we adapt every year and go with the changes too. We have really started to introduce more mental health programs and initiatives, and vaping and other substance use. We focus on suicide prevention in general. So we've been doing gambling prevention, anything that could lead to addiction is sort of how I look at it, that we will touch on, we will focus, we're passionate about.
So, your perspective is just a general basic public health decrease of risk analysis?
Yes.
Okay. So from when I look at this information, I see two broad categories that are kind of seem to be missing, which is safe driving techniques, especially in our 11th and 12th graders. There's a few questions on there, and then I don't really see anything about safe sex and that kind of conversation where that falls in there.
So we do a lot of education on safe driving, but we didn't include it in this part of presentation. As far as safe sex, we kind of leave that to like the Rape Crisis Center. I know they go in the schools to give discussions about healthy relationships, but we do go one step further. We have a youth committee, which is like an option for kids to have a healthy place to go where they're accepted to do activities and get more cohesive with their community, which is a protective factor. But I don't know if you want to add anything else.
I don't believe there's any questions on the school survey. I don't believe so. If that's something that, yeah. I think previous administrators, it was something that they didn't necessarily feel appropriate in the school survey. We have asked about, access to guns and weapons. Like I said, this is, if anyone would like to see the school survey, that's an option too, to see what kind of questions, because Etsy wasn't able to touch on every single question that we have. But if that is, I know like our BODAC one they asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there might be some questions. I'll have to go back and look through the school survey.
So the students who received the survey is exactly the same for the 7th, 9th, and 11th graders?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. That's it.
Because I think with the driving ages, a 9th grader probably really isn't driving yet, typically. So 11th grade, yes, but.
Yes.
So the question might be a little skewed if it's just that one subset of kids.
Right.
Other questions? All right, thank you so much for the presentation. It was very informative. We look forward to additional information.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Don't feel like you have to stay.
Oh, it's past my bedtime.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to the next item. It is the annual update on summer curriculum and professional learning. So I'll turn things over to Mr. Altieri.
Thanks, sir.
Is there a handout for this, Ms. Griffin?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. Glennon, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My hope is, as we kick off our instructional highlight series for the 24-25 school year, is to update you on some of the summer curriculum work that we have been doing over the last several weeks to months, as well as some of the professional learning opportunities that the district has engaged in, but then also give you a little bit of an overview of some of the work that we're doing to continue to improve our professional learning system here in district. So we'll end this evening with some next steps and things that we're continuing to work on in the 24-25 school year. So with that being said, on the first slide for this evening, you have a diagram that has been populated with a multitude of different curriculum projects across all of the content areas and disciplines. We're excited that we have work going across each of our academic content areas. Some of the ones that I wanted to point out to you are in program review right now. We are starting to take a look at our mathematics elective courses at the middle and high school, so grades 6 through 12. We have also done a lot of work, and you'll see this, we'll come back to this when we talk about professional learning. We've begun to really take a stance at integrating writing into our middle school ELA curriculum, as well as the work that we've been doing at the pre-K and kindergarten level for our intentional play scenarios. Those have been completely developed for pre-K and have gone through a revision and enhancement for grade K. And lastly, we continue to bolster our elementary world language program to make sure that there is true alignment to our ACTFL standards to really support that proficiency development as students progress through the world language program. We had the wonderful opportunity in mid-July to convene our HQI Live Season 5. Approximately 110 staff participated in the Institute. Thank you to the board members that took some time out of their busy schedules to come in and be part of that for some of the time. We also had a contingent from the Watertown Public Schools that came to preview the work that we were doing with HQI Live. I'm incredibly happy to be able to step into the shoes of being able to continue the work, and a lot of districts have taken notice at what we've done here with HQI Live and are looking to build and emulate those practices in their own system. So this year we were fortunate to have 4 different lab classrooms as part of our HQI work, each facilitated by a series of host teachers. The first classroom that we had was grade 1 math and special education. And this is the first time that we have integrated special education into one of those content classrooms during HQI Live. And it was great to be able to see both the math educator as well as the special educator working side by side with students. And we, each year, as part of the process, go through and we establish class rosters that take into account a variety of learners. So we look at race and ethnicity, we look at special education status versus regular education students. So we have classrooms that are comprehensive and really represent what you would find in an everyday classroom in Milford Public Schools. And it was phenomenal to be able to see how all of our students thrived in that classroom setting. It was impossible for educators to tell which students were special education students versus non-special education. We had a grade 1 literacy classroom, high school English language arts, and we had a combined music and world language, which was a big success. Kids got to learn not only Spanish during the content time, but also diving into learning and developing their own songs on the ukuleles. So the focus this year was really on, last year, the board had the opportunity to preview our brand new district equity framework. And we really wanted an opportunity to make this come alive for staff this year. So it was an opportunity for us to align our HQI framework with our equity framework. And the theme really centered around equitable instructional practices for all learners. So over the course of the week, we looked at practices designed to keep students thinking at grade level. We had an opportunity to look at equitable ways to respond to and group students in the classroom. And lastly, we spent some time with our educators thinking about where does equity fall within our HQI model. And we did this really comprehensive straying activity where the educators were connecting across not only our HQI and our equity framework, but across all of our district frameworks to see some of those connections. And it was eye-opening to see some of the conclusions that our educators made. Secondly, we had a Summer Literacy Institute, which was our first time going through this. And it was in collaboration with some of the professional learning consultants that we work with throughout the year. And we had the idea of, let's create a literacy institute that would get our educators thinking about practices and concepts relevant to literacy instruction. And in the first go-through, we actually opened it up to surrounding districts. We thought, what a great opportunity if we could bring together kind of a colloquium of educators from across Connecticut to be able to engage in conversation and learn together and talk about best practices across districts. So we had 4 different consultants that came together, and we had a focus for each content band, grade level band. So K-5 really focused in on the practices around the science of reading as we continue to think about our literacy work in our curriculum in district. And then grades 6 through 12 looked at writing across all of the different reading curriculum. So how do we integrate writing as part of the work that we're doing with reading? We even had an opportunity for our instructional coaches, instructional specialists, to have sessions dedicated to them for how we support teachers with the teaching of reading, but also the teaching of writing. We had such great feedback from the staff that they've asked for us to think about this as a concept for professional learning going forward. So we're thinking about ways to continue to improve this if we do kick off a season 2 for our Summer Literacy Institute. There's also been a lot of work that we've been doing around thinking about the shifts in literacy instruction. And starting last year in the spring, we signed up for and were selected to participate in the final cohort of the Connecticut State Department of Education and Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, Science of Reading Masterclass. And it is a select group of districts that come together for a full day institute, and there's 6 different sessions. We actually wrap up in December of 2024. It needs to be completed because they used some of the ARPA grant funding for it, so in terms to fit the timelines for the grant funding. With that, the morning session begins with a national expert who comes in and provides professional learning to the participants on one of the core tenets of the science of reading, whether it's phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary. And then the afternoon, we are actually paired with another district in an affinity group format. So it gives us the opportunity to be able to talk about best practices across districts. And I really like how they've broken us out, so there's opportunities for principals across the districts to come together, teachers and coaches, as well as central office administrators. And what we're hoping is a lot of the work and the professional learning that we're getting in the Science of Reading Masterclass feeding back into the district. So we started to think intentionally about how do we do this work from a district literacy leadership or advocacy group. So Ms. Morrow, myself, and a few of the teacher leaders actually convened together a group of educators that are doing some of the leadership from the district stance and district level. And we're looking at groups to inform, obviously, curricular decisions, giving us feedback. As you know, we are looking at piloting some reading resources going into the fall. So those particular individuals giving us some feedback for us to consider as we select the future of the programmatic materials to support our curriculum. But also to help us evaluate the curricular resources as well. So we're in the process now of establishing criteria that we will use to think about how we would score the literacy programs that we're reviewing. And culminating with this, as I mentioned to you, the Science of Reading Masterclass, one of the elements that we build as part of the work is a literacy improvement plan that helps to guide our action steps moving forward. So that work will come in and be able to support the district literacy advocacy group. And we're hoping from that work that at the school level as well as the district level, there'll be opportunities for those groups to be able to talk about literacy across the schools. So we've actually started to meet with all of our elementary principals to do some work around literacy planning for the 24-25 school year. And a lot of that work has really centered around creating opportunities for intentional professional learning. And this morning into the afternoon, we had a full day of UFly, which is our phonics curricular resource. We had the consultants come in from UFly today to be able to present to our educators K-5 As you remember, we've talked about using UFly as a grade 4 and 5 as a tier 2 small group support and as part of the tier 1 curriculum in our K through 3 classroom. And educators found it incredibly beneficial today. I had the opportunity to go in and spend some time during the Institute, and they did a really nice job at walking through each day what are the instructional strategies and the tools that you're using during that 30 minutes of phonics instruction. So we're hoping to create kind of this flow where the professional learning helps to guide the work that we're doing in district. And I want to mention too, we have 26 staff, teachers, administrators. Dr. Kataya and myself participate in the Science of Reading Masterclass as well. This past week, we had a national expert, and probably more even now an international expert, Dr. Peter Liljedahl, who has published several books. He's a renowned author, is a professor at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Washington. Actually came in and spent 2 full days with us, supporting our educators with teaching practices to enhance learning. A lot of them aligned to our HQI model. And we had over 90 MPS teacher participants that signed up. So each day was a repeat of the workshop. There was only a max of 60 participants allowed, so gave the opportunity for us to host 2 days and get as many educators involved in the work as possible. During that time, we talked about when, where, and how to give thinking tasks to kids. But then also, how do we form collaborative groups during that time? And how do teachers consolidate lessons? So when we have kids working in small groups, how do we bring them together to get the essence or the big ideas and themes from the learning? So that takes me to kind of the next part of the presentation. And that's really thinking about how do we keep the momentum going around professional learning. And this is work that we started last spring with the supervisor team. And one of the things that we wanted to get into is we thought about building coherence around all of our professional learning structures, was thinking about the research. So what's helping to guide our decisions? And there's an article that's out there that was published several years ago in 2008 by an author named Tinjala. And what she talked about was that research into professional learning differs in educational organizations than it does in the traditional workplace context. So the way that we structure professional learning differs very much from how the business industry and other industries structure theirs. One of the things that they noticed was that competence is developed through application. So sitting folks in a room for 4, 5, 6 hours, giving them theory, giving them strategy, doesn't do anything for helping them to translate that to practice. They found that there needs to be opportunities for that application to occur. We mostly rely on the assumption that learning is going to occur spontaneously, with no guidance. So there's a lot of different studies out there that talk about the fact that professional learning, for it to work really well, requires a guide or a coach or a mentor, conversations back and forth around that particular strategy. And then we also talk about reflection as being a key social component to reinforce learning. So there's a lot of work that goes into thinking about, and it's tough to see in the diagram, but at the very top, there's 2 kind of gray boxes. One is this concept of conceptual knowledge, and then the other one is that experiential. And it requires, in order for learning to take place, you'll notice there's that double loop circle there. In order for transfer to occur, there needs to be opportunities for reinforcement, for reflection, that occur throughout the process. So as we started to think as a team about the research, we were in the process as a leadership team last year. Dr. Katai and I, during our pre-K-12 leadership meetings with our leadership team, have spent some time digging into kind of a mentor text. And the book is Systems for Instructional Improvement. And in one of the chapters, they talk about what's known as professional learning subsystems. And in the book, they mention 4. We have what's known as the traditional pull-out professional development. So that's what we think of in August, that's what we think of in November during election day. Teachers get in a room for 6 or 7 hours. Somebody stands up front, clicks through slides, or gives new information, new theory around an instructional practice. There's teacher collaboration time. And that's where teachers are getting together, there's structured discussion, there's opportunity for dialogue. The instructional coaching, which is just as it sounds, there is an individual that has significant content, skill-based experience that's going in to be able to support teacher with practice, enhancing and building that practice. And then there's also teacher advice networks. And those are interesting because those are opportunities for some of the informal dialogue to go and happen across buildings. So encouraging teachers to build some of those connections. And if you think back to the last slide where we talked about opportunities where there's new knowledge, but then there also needs to be application, this particular resource highlights those 2 points. That there is what they refer to as 2 types of professional learning knowledge acquisition. There's what they call investigation, which is just as it sounds. You're reading about, you're learning about a new strategy. But then in order for that to translate into productive outcomes for kids, for teaching, there also needs to be this enactment element. And that's where teachers are now trying that form of practice out in their classrooms. But it's not just trying it out. I can go back into a room, I can try a strategy, not know if it works well or doesn't work at all. There needs to be opportunities for feedback. And whether that's informal feedback from colleagues, that's feedback from an instructional coach, feedback from an administrator. There needs to be that kind of continual process where they're getting the information and being able to make changes to it. So thinking about those 2 things, in your board packet this evening, I have shared with you a diagram for how we have thought about constructing a brand new kind of design principle for our learning system here in Milford. And this is work that we started last spring with the instructional supervisors. We presented this to the leadership team during our June retreat to get them to have an opportunity for feedback. And then again, we worked through this at our August retreat. So there's been lots of opportunities for Dr. Katai and I to receive feedback on this prior to finalization, and it has gone through several drafts. So what I want to point out to you is that this is kind of a cycle, and there's multiple elements to the cycle. So if we think about our professional learning structures in district, we know the big one. We have our full-day professional learning workshops, and that's represented at the top left in kind of the aqua color. This is where staff are acquiring new content knowledge. There's maybe even new strategies. A lot of this is really theory-based. So teachers are getting that new learning. Attached to that, remember we talked about one of the things that needs to happen is opportunities for application, acquiring feedback along the way. So as we think about some of our Wednesday structures, we have 2, the 1 hour, which is in the pinkish purple at the bottom left, and the 1.5 hour, which is in the top right in the green. These are both happening after the school day is over. So after students go home, this is teacher time that happens after the conclusion of the student day. So I want to talk about the 1 hour first. In the 1 hour, we have 2 basic pieces or 2 basic priority focus areas that we want to be able to use this time for. The first one is building-based opportunities for some of those meetings. We know that there's an opportunity that principals need to be able to come around on logistical items, whether it's going over test proctoring for standardized testing in the spring, or it's opportunities to be able to talk about building level issues. So it's really the logistical, procedural meeting. But then there's also, I mentioned to you a little while ago about the teacher advice networks. We want to try something new this year known as Teacher Support Network. So we've changed that up a little bit. And this is really an opportunity for some structured teacher collaboration. And we are working at thinking about this from the building level. So how do we prioritize and give building principals the opportunity to establish some focus areas? I'll give you an example. In talking with several of the elementary principals, we've thought about what a great way for, as we're digging into the work on the science of reading, if we have educators that are excited and passionate around, say, phonemic awareness or phonics, and want to run a group where we can get grade level teachers from across the school to come together and talk about strategies around that particular area, that's a great time and a great way for those educators to be able to engage in some of those conversations and dialogue. When we go up to the top right, the 1.5 hour, so we have heard loud and clear, we've talked about it in board meetings, we've heard from our constituents in the community, that opportunities for us to be able to take a look at our data. And we really wanted to make sure this year that while we know that MPS is not just all about data, there's other elements too to the work that we do. We wanted opportunities for our educators to have some of that structured time using a protocol. So the team is in the process now of establishing a protocol to help guide educators with questions and strategies to be able to look at data. And the data can be classroom data. We've done a lot of work over the year last year at developing instructional routines. Things like small group and conferring in the literacy classroom. How do we provide educators opportunities to look at some of that data for strategies in their classroom? But then also some of the data that you think of in a common stance. So as we give out dibbles in the fall, winter, and spring, structuring time right around when that data is available for educators to do a deep dive into where their students are. Aligned to that, we've also talked about HQI learning experiences. And these two you're going to see in a moment when we talk about the early dismissal, which is at the very bottom. These two kind of go hand in hand. So we do a great job at launching HQI Live in July every year. And we really dig into a few select strategies, a few select focus areas that we want to go over throughout the whole year. And we really want to make sure, especially during our early dismissal time, that we do some mini HQI experiences across 612, across K5, that dig teachers further into some of the HQI concepts that we launched during HQI Live. So you can think of HQI Live as kind of this buffet experience, where you can try a little bit of several different items. During the school year, we really want to go into those items with greater depth. And the HQI mini experiences that happen on the early dismissal days require that longer period of time. If you think about HQI Live, it takes us 6 days to not only tackle the professional learning, but also opportunities for educators to go into classrooms with kids live and see that learning unfold. So the HQI Live experiences on those early dismissal days, that gives us the opportunity to be able to do it on a much smaller scale, but be able to talk about the focus, be able to get educators in the classroom. And the most important part of that is the debrief. What are we doing with that information afterwards? We can go in all day and fill out a check sheet or take notes on what we're seeing. But it really becomes important to come back around and talk about what we're seeing, to think about our next steps as a school, as a district, for how we're moving the work forward. And we have an HQI scope and sequence that basically spells out per month what we're looking to work on throughout the year. So that would really help us to dictate what's done during those HQI Live experiences. There's also an element where, at the end of the day, we've talked a lot about strategy tonight. We can't forget about the content. The content is a big piece too that we need to make sure is there and is present. So this is opportunities for the levels to be able to dig into the math content, the science content. So again, sometimes on the early dismissal days, we're doing those HQI Live, those larger HQI Live mini experiences. Other times it is content level professional learning. So I want to shift this back up to the green. So we've talked about kind of this larger level, cross-level, vertical HQI Live mini experience. We know that each school is in a different place instructionally. And some schools have different priorities from others. So we want to make sure that as we do professional learning with our building principals, and we're really good about developing PL that they can turnkey back with their staff, we do it together so they can ask questions, we can go through it as a team, and then they're able to take those same strategies and tools back to the building and facilitate that with their staff. So we want to make sure that on the times where they're not doing the building-based information and business, there's an opportunity for them to do some of those HQI learning experiences with their schools that are specific to the needs of their particular building. Okay. And the nice thing about, as we talk about the 1.5 hour, so on the times where they're doing the data, we now have, and we've launched this year, our first elementary assessment calendar. And on that elementary assessment calendar, it spells out for both literacy and numeracy, the assessments, as well as the cut scores and benchmarks, as well as the dates that we collect the data from the staff. So we now have that clear and consistent across all 8 of our elementary schools. So we're really proud about the coherence work that we've done and how supportive our elementary leadership team has been around that work. Leading to this is we have a plan, and I did not include this doc. We have mapped out every single professional learning day through the remainder of the school year. And this particular document took days, hours to put together, because this particular document now sets up the cycle. So if you were able to go through this and you looked down, we have a column for elementary, we have a column for secondary, and the secondary column now allows some of that flexibility for our supervisors to be able to be between the middle school and the high school level. But all of these elements are in regular rotations throughout those Wednesday structures. So when we do an HQI launch, an HQI experience, and we give staff that new information, there's now opportunities between when we do the next HQI launch for staff to come together and talk about data around their students, but then also be able to get some feedback and do some of those teacher collaboration around the strategies in their classrooms. So we've mapped out every day through June of 2025 in this document. It's a document that is shared with all of our principals. So where does that take us for next steps? So as we go into 24-25, there's really 4 big areas that we're looking at as a team. So we're excited about, we're coming up on the full launch of our high school mastery-based diploma experience process at the high school level. That will be kicking off in the coming weeks, and this will launch us into the planning process for bringing that work down to the middle school. We are in the process of starting a full year revamp of our elementary report card, really making that standards-based, including educator grading guides for each content area that spells out not only what expectations from a student performance standpoint should be there, but also what assessment information educators will use to assign that value on the report card. We're going to get into this year talking about common grading and drafting out a framework at the high school level in 24-25. And then as I mentioned to you, bringing that student data protocol to our educators to use during those 1.5 hour data times. So those are really 4 big areas that I'm excited to be able to update you on throughout the school year and going into 25-26 as we do this work. So thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to let me share the first instructional highlight of the year, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Questions for Mr. Altieri?
Did we skip the classroom yellow section?
I did, thank you. Let me go back one. So the yellow section, remember that this isn't done in a vacuum. So we're not doing professional learning on a Wednesday or on a full day and then forgetting about it. We want what we do in professional learning to feed back into the classroom. We talked about that enactment. So opportunities for lab sites and collegial visits and instructional coaching. And we're hoping that as teachers are accessing some of those resources, each other, coaches, that they're also learning what they need more from for PL. And that information is then, you'll notice the arrows two ways, it's feeding back into the professional learning cycle. So it's just capturing the fact that we don't want teachers to think about this as what I do on a Wednesday is done on a Wednesday, or what I do on election day is done and then I don't see it again. We want it to know that it's job embedded and it's happening throughout the school year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions now?
I mean, yes, but I can let someone else go.
Go ahead, Ms. Mahler.
Clarifying on the reason I wanted to go back to the classroom piece,
Yeah.
because I know that's the part when we're talking about teachers being pulled out of class. I just want to clarify that that's that part. So a teacher is essentially watching another teacher teach, doing the feedback loop, the experiencing it, everything that you've talked about, the enactment piece there.
Yeah, so we try to
But
limit.
during the day.
We do try to limit the times that teachers are out of the classroom, so that way they're in with kids. Obviously, there's certain things that, you know, are inevitable, that teachers are sometimes pulled for, but we do try to minimize and are gonna continue to try to minimize the times that coaches and teachers are pulled from the classroom. So we're continuously looking at that, and using the information that we have at hand to think about how we can do those structures in other ways.
It's also a time that coaches are pushing in, though. The
Yeah.
teachers are not leaving their rooms.
Yeah.
Right,
So it's like
yeah,
a side by side.
It was the coaching, it was the coming in, but it was also the teachers, the collegial visits, which I hadn't seen a name for before, but I love that. It sounds much warmer and fuzzier than it feels on the outside. First, I just want to say thank you for this. It's very clear, having heard many of these instructional highlights about different parts of the district and what's going on. Every month, it's always amazing to me how much, amazing is probably not the right word, but it's so heartening to see how much care and passion and effort goes into this. So thank you for what you do to drive all of this, because I know that it's not just a matter, we talk so much about helping our teachers teach better, because that gives better outcomes to our kids. And that has so many second and third order effects as well, from recruiting and retention and making sure that our teachers and our staff we're actually looking at as individuals and humans with careers and goals and plans, not just tools to teach our kids.
Yeah.
And that's an extremely important three-dimensional view of people that is invaluable. And it's one of the things I think we do very, very well here, and that you all as a staff do very well.
As
So
I
think that
mentioned, it's a lot of work from a lot of different people.
it was a lot of work to put these slides together, so thank you. Much less everything that you do that went into just being presented here. So all of that effort and how it has just grown and expanded over time it all feeds in and it all makes sense. And we see the same little map of the colors woven together and the same little drawing that looks like it's on the back of a napkin. And we see all these things all the time, but all of these pieces come together. And we can really see that in this piece of it. My one concern with this, and it's a very similar concern that I've expressed repeatedly and will very likely continue to do so because it is important to me, is that policy and planning and acting at this level, when you get down to the details and the execution at the level where our kids and our families are experiencing it, can sometimes be disconnected and sometimes lose a little bit of its shine and its impact when you get to that. And oftentimes there's a second and third order effect there as well that can throw off the balance of the good being done with the, okay, this is what we have to deal with, this is the result of that. And I think one of the ways here, we see so many good things coming from all the benefits that our teachers and our staff and our administrators are getting, and our students are getting that benefit. Obviously, that's how it all cycles. But one of the big challenges that I have experienced as a parent as well, and I'm not speaking for anyone else on this board, I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of families as well, is that when we actually see this plan taken from this paper and executed across the sum total of the school year, it is mind-numbingly complex. And there's a lot of it. And there's a lot of it. And when you really look at it, if you look at our calendar, and I compared our calendar to several other districts in the area, and we have more professional learning days split across both half days and full days than 3 of the main districts around us. Fine, purpose to that, I'm sure. However, when you come down to the calendar, that is where the rubber meets the road and how it impacts our families. And I'm not just talking about collegial visits where I feel like at least once a week my kid's like, yeah, so my teacher had to get pulled out to go watch another teacher teach, so we had a sub and twiddled our thumbs. Like that's not a direct quote, but it's a little bit of a paraphrase. That happens a lot when we prioritize having kids in class with teachers. But that also translates to this calendar, where if you look from the start of school until summer for the upcoming school year, by my count, could be wrong, kind of read calendars well, but can always miss something. There appear to be 2 times during the year where we have back-to-back 5-day weeks. That's it. There's once in the fall where we have a 5-day week followed by a 5-day week, and there's once in the spring where we have a 5-day week followed by a 5-day week. And when you look from winter, when we get back from the winter holiday through spring break, there are only 5 full weeks out of 15 school weeks. I spotted you spring break and the half week that we come back after winter break. But there's 15 weeks in that time frame, and there's only 5 of those that our kids are in school 5 days in a row. And this counts for conferences and holidays and all of that, but when you start sprinkling in so many early dismissal days, the amount of disruption that is caused to kids who can't hit a stride, who can't hit a momentum, who can't hit a routine with their teachers in their classrooms, the disruption that is caused to their learning experience, that is caused to their just general day, and that's caused to the families who are putting together a plan for what do I do with my kids before, during, and after school. I expect them to be in school during school, and then I will deal with them before and after, except here, and here, when the schedule is changed, here, and here. From winter through summer, there's 21 weeks, and our kids are in 5-day weeks 7 times. That's it. That's a third. I can do that math. That's a third. And that doesn't feel like a lot. And it feels like all of this amazing learning that we are giving to our teachers and to our staff that has such a fantastic benefit in the long run is being undercut by the fact that we're not letting them actually sit in classrooms for a very long amount of time and have our kids experience that benefit. It's great that we're teaching them, but we're never giving them the opportunity to actually teach for an extended period of time. Like you said, you can't learn something just by having someone show you 6 hours sitting in the classroom reading PowerPoints. You have to experience it. It's the same for our kids. They have to actually experience all the cool stuff their teachers are learning how to teach. And we are undercutting that opportunity for them, I believe, by the fact that we are just breaking up and disrupting their days so much. And I know that this past year, a couple of years ago, before my time on the board, and I'm sure others will speak to the accuracy of this, we added additional time to the calendar for professional learning. Great. Last year, the 23-24 school year was the very first full school year where we experienced that brand new calendar. And on behalf of a family member, did not like, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. And yet, last December, when we only had half of that calendar under our belt, right before it gets to the real hard crunch time in the spring, that has those really low numbers just talked about, that's when we had to approve the calendar for this year. So I understand that we're locked in this year with that same really crunch schedule, that calendar that is very disruptive to our children's extended, consistent learning experiences. But I, for one, would very much like to see, in December, when we look at the calendar for next year, something different. I don't want to speak for the rest of the board. I know that may or may not be something that's a discussion for another day, not looking to have it right now. But I think that the amazing work and the thought that has gone into strategically planning and developing these learning experiences for our teachers to be so good at what they do is completely being undermined by the fact that we are not letting them do it. And I think it's harmful to our kids, it's challenging for our families, and it's not fair to our teachers. So I love what you're doing, I love the plan, but I want to see it implemented and executed in a way that actually allows it to live up to its full potential, which I do not think it does right now.
And we do, we appreciate the feedback, and just like I presented to you tonight, this was reflection on what we've done in the past, and just like everything else, you know, Dr. Katai and I have not approached talking about calendar for next year, and
exactly.
But you know, we sit down and we go through a pretty extensive process of taking a look at the calendar itself before it even comes to the board. So, you know, I'm sure there's conversations that her and I will have as we start launching into that in the early fall. So
it feels like a very good time to put a marker down for that conversation later. Thank you.
But appreciate your sharing your feedback with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I just have one thing, because I take your point, and I agree that there's, you know, however that wants to be structured, but we are still teaching 181 days. We're not cutting that short, correct?
Correct. It's
Okay.
181 day school year last year.
Okay, so the professional learning is not taking away from the number of days that we teach.
No.
Okay.
No,
I just wanted to make sure that I'm not.
Still in school for those.
Okay, thank you.
They're just really checked out.
No, I get it. I'm just trying to make sure that my understanding is that we are still teaching our kids the correct number of days and that we need to be doing. Okay, which is actually, I think, one day more.
And we know too, there's a balance of, so we talked a lot tonight, Ms. Mueller, about the professional learning aspects. There's also a lot of compliance and trainings that the state continuously pushes out for districts that we're also trying to find a place within the schedule to be able to have staff to have time to be able to complete those. So there's a lot of other elements that go into that as well. And just like everything else, the professional learning demands for educators continuously grow each and every year. So that's something we're also considering.
And the compliance is great, and I know the state loves to sprinkle requirements down from the sky. That's sort of the state's favorite thing, feds too. But again, there has to be a way to do it that doesn't disrupt our kids this way.
Ms. Boynton?
I'm just curious, do you have evidence? I mean, it's interesting because I've never heard this argument before, and are you talking anecdotally, or is there studies done that if children go 5 days in a row, their learning is diminished? Is it anecdotal evidence, or are we talking about something that has been scientifically proven to be true?
No, I think what I'm talking about is the experience of our families and our kids when they're not experiencing a full week of school consistently.
So you're talking anecdotally based on your experience?
Anecdotally based on my experience. I personally have not experienced a child whose learning is suffering, and that's not exactly the point I'm making, which is why I feel the need to clarify. It's more a disruption to both our families and our students.
In what way, though? I'm just not clear where the disruption is.
In needing to find additional after childcare, needing to find new ways to adjust your schedule consistently, because a 5-day school week is just not the consistent norm. The norm is, okay, it's Wednesday, what's the aftercare plan for an additional half a day today? Okay, next week, all right, who's gonna take off work and watch kids now? Or can we extend daycare again and go back there? It's just, without feeling like I need to point to scientific studies, say take a 7-year-old and put them in a place where they're just kind of up and down all the time, it's not necessarily conducive to good outcomes across the board, educational or otherwise. It's a challenge for families and kids.
As someone who has had 2 children go through the public school system.
You understand more than most, yes, absolutely.
I disagree. I truly disagree. I don't think this is right now is the time for the argument, but I think that if we're going to talk about things like, and saying things so definitively, like our families and children's lives are being disrupted, that we need to have some kind of evidence to stand behind those, rather than just anecdotal evidence.
Well, if you consider the baseline as a 5-day school week and we don't have very many of those, the disruption is just the calendar.
Just as a matter of clarification, we've had half-days for professional learning for decades. I mean, when my kids were in school, there were half-days, and there were similar numbers. You know, it's gone up a little bit or down a little bit, but there's been a significant number of, not similar numbers of half-days of school for a very, very long time in Milford, just as a, so I mean, I've gone through it too with 3 kids, having to make those adjustments. Did you have anything else?
No, I just think it's one of the challenges, in any kind of discipline, is how do you create how do you do the best, right? You have the greatest and most positive effect for the largest group of people. And unfortunately, you're never going to make everyone 100% happy. And I think that I could be wrong, but my perception of the public school experience, or any school experience, is that that it's going to come with half days, that there's going to be professional development, and that's why we have wonderful programs within our school, like the YMCA after school program, and there are other ways for parents to be able to find coverage for their children, and why we get the calendar out so early. It seems like this was a spectacular presentation that we had today, and I think what we are doing in educating our teachers is one of the reasons why people want to come to Milford, right? Is because we're not just investing in our students, but we're investing in our teachers. And how do you get better outcomes? The more adept and knowledgeable that our teachers are, will the students only get the benefit of that. I would just be curious whether, this was I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, but this wonderful woman who came and spoke to us today. I mean, in my 6 years on the board, this is the first time, aside from the emails that were sent, that there is an issue. I don't know if there is a citywide issue, if there are spotty issues, but I just think before we make such definitive statements, that we need to make sure that, we have the evidence to back it up, and that we're coming from a place of historical knowledge, and greater understanding of why we're doing the things we are.
And certainly, we have several months now before we're going to be actually discussing the calendar. We'll do that in December. We start our conversation about the calendar. I'm certainly, going to approach it with an open mind and have a conversation about, what do we have. I'm more than willing to talk about eliminating the 2 extra days we put in. I think administration has certainly heard that loud and clear. So, we have that time ahead of us to move into that conversation in December about the calendar specifically. I had 2 questions. The mastery-based diploma experience, is that MBD?
Yep, MBD.
That is a mandated, we have to move in that direction, is that
It
correct?
was, they have since repealed that legislation.
Oh, okay.
We have decided that it is work that is imperative to continuing to support our vision of the learner, as well as our just want and ability to be able to give students experiences to continue to grow as learners. So we have decided to continue to build that and craft that program in support of our students K-12.
Okay, and my other question is, so from what I'm understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, that the whole, your professional learning calendar, your plan includes collaboration time with staff.
Mm-hmm.
And how important is that?
Incredibly important. And that's just for the fact that they're either collaborating around data, and with that data collaboration, there's an action plan that ties in instructional strategies. So there is, prior to the next meeting, this is the in-between work that we're going to do, and this is the information that we're going to bring to that next meeting to continue our dialogue and discussion. So I think it's so important to talk about commonality of practice, but then also if something's not working for you, it may work for somebody else differently, and being able to have that dialogue in a room is so vital.
And in terms of the ability for teachers to have that collaborative time, it's this designated professional learning time is really the only time to do that, is that correct? During the school day?
It's difficult during the school day without pulling them from classes and thinking about substitutes and everything else. That's the opportune time where we have it built into the teacher's schedule to be able to have those conversations.
So there's work that has to be done in some way.
Correct.
Just figuring out how to do it
important.
is the puzzle. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. I'm gonna go back to one of the first slides, I think it's slide 4. You had said something along the lines of, want to align our developmental framework with the focus of equitable instructional practices. Not verbatim, but similar to what it was. And something you said on stay on grade level. And so is the goal within the classroom to try and keep all the students on grade level, and this is part of that pushing forward versus allowing students to kind of go back?
Right, we know that it's important to keep kids thinking and doing tasks that are on grade level, to keep that learning going, and then we're providing those hints and extensions and scaffolds along the way to keep students working at grade level. But we've seen, and Dr. Kataya presented in presentations, that spending that time doing remediation just continues to expand that achievement gap further and further. So we want students to interact with the grade level task, and at the end of the day, we've seen as educators that every kid can interact with the grade level content. It's different on how the supports and the extensions that they need to be able to do so.
Great, thank you. And then in terms of the professional learning, I think this is a fantastic presentation and really great to start the year off on. I think one of the biggest things what I was really like taken aback when I started on the board a few years ago was that there's no coherent curriculum across our district until we really started doing that work and implementing that.
There was no.
Right, there
Past
was
tense.
none presence, which may not be a big deal, but we have 2 high schools, 3 middle schools, 8 elementary schools. That alone is 14, sorry, my math is 14 different administrators, 14 different schools of how those schools are laid out, how they're put together. So we have to have a model that works together that says, hey, this is how we're doing it, this is how we're learning. And, whenever you're in a new system, it's trying to find how do those procedures work so that it benefits everyone, as many as we can. And I think one of the hardest challenges that you really confronted, which is really nice to see these different interactions within the model of you are dealing with students who are in the classroom for a period of time, but you also are time limited on how much time you have the teachers. By union contract, they are only allowed to be in the building for a certain number of hours and get paid for the work that they're doing. So we have to do everything within a very time-limited space with a certain number of professional learning, and the strides that we've seen as a Milford Public School graduate, and to see when you go into a classroom, you're like, oh, that's the same thing that 20 years ago. Or if we look at a board policy, I think that's so important as we can bring these systems across all classrooms and the district is vitally important. I'm not going to comment on any of the calendar stuff. We have time for that in the future. But I think, thank you for taking the time to go through this and explain this to us. It's extremely beneficial.
Thank you, appreciate the feedback.
Other questions from board members?
I have a question on
Yes.
HQI.
Yeah.
The HQI in the summer is strictly voluntary, right?
It's voluntary, but staff are paid for it. They're compensated for their time.
So the mini HQIs, are those new topics or topics that are, or extensions of the summer topics?
Those are extensions of the summer topics.
So, but the mini ones are the ones where that's not.
Right, so we take one of those topics, I mentioned the buffet analogy earlier, and we really dig down deep into that one topic.
For all staff members?
For all staff, correct.
So that definitely helps to build consistency across.
Correct. And that's time to get levels together, different schools together, as was just raised a few minutes ago by Mr. Webb.
And I just had another question. So the 1 hour and the 1.5 hour, that's part of the early dismissal hour time, or is that after school?
No,
hours?
so students are in school full day. That's after the student hours. There's extra time that is there that the teachers stay after students leave and do the work during that time.
And that's contractual.
Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Other questions? You all set? Anything else? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Altieri, for the thorough presentation.
Thank you, board members.
Ms. Glenn, a couple closing remarks to that, please.
Sure.
So we will entertain the feedback we're getting when we come back with the calendar to you guys in December, so thank you for that. Just going to read from a couple emails that I receive from teachers occasionally, reflecting on professional learning experiences. So one teacher says to Steve and myself, I'm truly grateful to be teaching in a district that allows opportunities for teachers to reflect, take risks, and improve their practice, which only benefits the kids. So that was nice feedback we got this summer from one of our teachers. And then another teacher being grateful for the opportunity to work in a district where she has trust and confidence is placed in her, and that she feels comfortable collaborating with staff and administrators in such an enriching environment. So expressing her gratitude on working here. And then a off-the-cuff comment of out of MTA, Milford Teacher Academy, which we didn't include, but
That's true.
we just inducted 34, 35 teachers new to Milford teachers last week. Sorry, it's the first week back to school. Have you noticed? And it's getting late. And we have to be up very early tomorrow. One teacher, our theme this year is belonging, and you'll hear more about that if you come to convocation tomorrow. This is on day 2 of MTA, and we are now digging into belonging at the zoo for one day for day 1. And she turns to one of us, one of our leadership team, and says, "You guys don't talk about this belonging thing. You really mean it around here, don't you?" Like, I don't know, I haven't been part of a district who really means what they say. So, not in a degrading way for any other district, but I feel like our actions speak for our district. And our teachers notice that, and they appreciate the time that we give them as professionals. I know that there's another side to that coin, but if we're going to stay on the focus, and the intent of tonight's presentation is there are systems and structures in Milford that need strengthening. And curriculum, as Ms. Doyle mentioned, is one of them. And as Ms. Mahler mentioned, there's a huge investment in the capacity of teachers, and that's honored, right? So those systems and structures have to be attended to. Realizing there are other systems and structures, but we've invested over the last few years on strengthening those, and those pieces are in a really good place today. And my last comment is, you would never know it, but it's this guy's 1-year anniversary in 2 days with Milford Public Schools. So if you take a look at the heavy lift that was just presented to you, a lot of that has to do because of Mr. Altieri's contribution already in less than a year. So thank you to you and your team.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Feels like it's years.
It's been a good year, very good year, so thank you.
Very good. All right, moving on.
You have some policy work?
Yes, for a
Can you try
second
and
read.
through this?
So Mr. Altieri is going to walk us through just highlights of the changes.
Yeah, I got it.
Because it's 9.
So there's 4 policies that are in front of you from the first read on July 8th, 2024. I'm going to start with policy 4112.5, security check and fingerprinting. Again, any of the changes, modifications have been made in blue since our first read. Just going through, first paragraph, we added through fingerprinting, as well as DCF next to Department of Children and Families. Going down, we removed the updated in 2019 after the board policy 4112.5, the statutory guidelines. And then also took out the wording "this requirement" at the end of the sentence in the next paragraph. Capitalizing the first letter in child abuse and neglect registry. And removing the non-credit adult class or adult ed activity language from the bottom paragraph on page 1. And that is all of the changes from the first read.
Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve Board Policy 4112.5/4212.5, security check fingerprinting as presented by the administration.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fermender. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Second policy for second read is 6145, extracurricular activities. Really no major changes. You can scroll through and just see some of the grammatical shifts. Really the only big change is on page 2, number 9, just changing curriculum to curricula.
Ms. Petrosky?
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve Board Policy 6145, extracurricular activities, limited open forum, as presented by the administration.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fermender. Is there any discussion or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Third policy is 6161.1, evaluation of instructional materials. Again, just some minor changes. Going on the back side, was just really adding in about quality of and changing some of the structure in that second paragraph just to be selected instructional materials.
Ms. Petrosky?
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve Board Policy 6161.1, evaluation of instructional materials as presented by the administration.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Mr. Fermender seconds. Any discussion or questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And then the final policy for second read is 6162, instructional resources for teachers. Again, no major changes, just Milford Public Schools in the first paragraph and contributor in number 5.
Ms. Petrosky?
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve Board Policy 6162, instructional resources for teachers as presented.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fermender. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. And the next item is a preliminary enrollment report. Ms. Griffin has a different document for you demonstrating how very quickly things change this time of year. So I will emphasize the word preliminary in this agenda item. I even really dislike this agenda item in August before kids get here, so please don't put too much stock in these numbers because it is on an hourly basis that we're making modifications, so. The sheet you were given Thursday is vastly different than what you have in front of you now. And I think we just go home. I'll wait for everyone to get their sheet. So at this time, as of today, we have enrolled and expect 5,198 students to attend school on Wednesday. That is 24 fewer students than we were projecting. So if you go to the budget book, on page Roman numeral 17 in the budget book, the numbers that I'm going to share with you come directly from that page, okay? So that's 24 fewer students than we are anticipating, and actually, I'm really surprised by that number because of the change in the kindergarten start date. We were anticipating just a huge dip in enrollment. So, but we're going to go level by level now, okay? So at the elementary level, we anticipate 2,468 students to attend school Wednesday morning, and that is 27 students fewer than we projected at time of budget. So you want that number, don't you? 2,495 is what we projected, sorry. At the middle school on Wednesday morning, we're hoping that 1,144 students will arrive compared to the 1,133 students we projected. So that's 11 more middle schoolers. And at the high school, we're expecting 1,586 students to attend school Wednesday compared to the 1,594 students, which is 8 students fewer. So I'm just gonna focus on kindergarten for a minute. Total students we have registered for kindergarten is 345 students. We budgeted for 387. Because I think I know you guys well enough, I'm going to give you another number that is not on here. We had offered the new pre-K class to 32 families. So those are 32 families whose children either chose not to apply for a waiver or applied for a waiver and did not get it for their child. 12 of those students as of today are officially registered to start school on Wednesday. Now, that doesn't mean that 20 more aren't coming. We've just have to do a little bit of chasing. So we're not sure what that number will look like by even this time next week. So 32 families were offered that slot, 12 have officially registered their child, okay? So I'm thinking you may want that data point. And those 12 children would be in the pre-K number to the far right of this chart, okay? We saw some surprise numbers at some schools. At JFK, we have 16 fewer children coming on Wednesday than we projected. At Live Oaks, we have 18 fewer students than projected. At Orchard Hills, we have 11 more children than projected. And at Pumpkin, we have 12 fewer students than projected. At Harborside, we have 22 more kids coming than anticipated. But at West Shore, we have 20 students fewer than projected. So you see that up and down motion. And then finally at Law, we have 24 students fewer than expected. Now I only gave you the bigger numbers. Some of the schools differ by, a couple of kids or so, but the ones that stood out is what I shared with you. But you could do your own analysis by going to Roman numeral page 17 if you'd like. And I'll do more analysis the next time we talk about enrollment after October 1st. So that's the general lay of the land for enrollment right now before we open our doors on Wednesday. Our bids department is working very carefully, I'm not exaggerating, hour by hour with every school. And we're getting registrations, we're getting withdrawals, we're getting homeschooling, we're moving to North Carolina, it's all of the above. Oh, school starts Wednesday? Where do I register? We get a little bit of that. And then the phenomena also is on an annual basis that after Labor Day, we get a little bit of enrollment. And then a couple of our schools experience families who are traveling internationally that come here for work. So all throughout September, we may even get some enrollments. So October 1st really is a much more solid number to share with you. But that's where we're at today.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I had gone back and looked at our last October census, and so we had 402 kindergartners last year, which would
Yes.
equate to first grade this year, which is up to 410. So at least we held that number.
Right, and we were anticipating a 22% drop-off on kindergarten based on our analysis when the legislation was passed, and that was not realized. It's much less. So we're really happy with our efforts in kindergarten. We still anticipate that kindergarten number to come in higher next year, the to bump back up,
Right.
fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
And at likely a quarterly update, we'll also share with you the impact of needing to add elementary teachers, and what the impact has been on the budget, but it's just too soon to share that. But that is just a little forecasting information for you coming. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. Just for clarification, that 32 families that were offered for the pre-K spot, would they have been all eligible to go into kindergarten under the previous September 1st
Under
cutoff?
previous,
Under the
yes.
September 1st
Yeah.
cutoff?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That 32 number is exactly what we're off from our projection. Just
I did
so
not
you
put
know,
that together.
It's exactly 32.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, can I just make a comment on that? Wasn't 387 our projection?
Yeah, 387 minus 45, am I not adding correctly at this late date?
Minus
It's
32.
it's 42.
42.
42.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So it's not 30.
Thanks for
Thank you.
keeping me company, Una.
I was like, I figured the
Appreciate it.
10 just didn't show back up, so that was
Yeah,
just, okay.
Sorry.
But
Well, no, I was gonna say 12, but no. Now
So
we're
that's 30 that
really,
you're following up with.
they're 20. 12 of the
20.
32 are coming, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Great.
Possibly one
Sweet.
more
So
is
42.
close in the works.
32.
okay.
32.
Yeah, so 10 off.
Yeah, right, okay.
And families could say no. They could say, I'm staying with the care that I have now. I'm gonna go to a different preschool experience, I'm gonna go to St. Mary's, like there are lots of options, and that's what, all of that is okay. But we felt, as supported by the board, to give families that option, so.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for the update on this.
Okay, and we're gonna go to a disbursement report with Mr. Brennan.
Ms. Glenn, members of the board, in your package, you will find a list of all the disbursements for amounts over $1,500 for the month of July. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions for board members? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. Pool repairs, is that a consistent yearly pool repair every year, or is that the end of year restart, or does something break?
I'm very glad you brought this up because it was actually something that I was going to mention at the end of this if there was no other questions. The pool repairs is actually something that Mr. Bradbury is continually bringing to my attention on a more regular basis. Very, very regular. It's a concern that he actually has with the longevity of the pool. The pool is original to the building. A lot of the different mechanisms and components of it are below ground, and it's hard to get some of that piping without a complete overhaul. So it's something that he wants us to bring to the attention, that the longevity of that pool and the need for it to be replaced is something that I would say is forthcoming. To your question, this is not just regular maintenance. These are things that are going on it. Some of these specific ones, like the Connecticut Custom Aquatics, is the acid feeder and the balancer. That was something that needed to be replaced and recalibrated, so that's one of the things that's on there. But yes, pool repairs have been on the rise lately, and that is something that is definitely, we are keeping a close eye on that.
Other questions?
And then one last one. What are health guards under WB Mason?
Where are you?
Online, on page 50, $13,150. Something in maintenance.
About a third of the way down. WB Mason.
Health guards.
Dual maintenance.
Oh, 13,000? Those are the menstrual product dispensers.
Got it. Thank you. And I saw an article in the paper today that schools are not in, but I'm assuming we're all
Some are not
compliant.
at all.
Yes. I'm
Well, we'll
assuming
put them
we're
up, we'll comply, but
It doesn't mean, yes, that's all I'm asking. You don't have to go any further.
you could fill in the blank.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
And finally, we will go to Ms. Capazza for the Talent Management and Development Report.
Thank you. So in my report, you have the current job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. I do want to point out a few things. much like enrollment that goes up and down, so does our open job list. We have hired 33 new teachers so far, and we have 4 openings left. But as of a couple of hours ago, we have 5 openings. Somebody had just resigned. So just so you guys know, when somebody resigns this close to the school year, or even last week, the week before, we do hold them for 30 days. Every district in Connecticut kind of does this. It's a gentleman's agreement, if you will. We all try to comply with it. It gives us an opportunity to find a replacement, etc. So also on the personnel recommendations, on the retirements, resignations, terminations, I like to point out that a few times per year, we do what we call cleanup. So if you see a bunch of terminations in a row, it's usually a substitute or a seasonal type employee, and if they haven't been active in a year, we will remove them from our employment, so we don't kind of keep people on the books that haven't worked in a long time and probably will not work in the near future. And if they would like to come back, we'll be entertaining that at that time. And I think that's it for me.
On the terminations, do you check in with them before you take them off ever? Or do you just take them off?
If they haven't worked for a year, we just take them off. That's cleanup, yeah. And like I said, it's typically seasonal people and substitutes.
Questions for Ms. Pasner? Yes.
Are the ready-to-learn ones the cleanup?
Cleanup, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions? Can you give an example of why somebody might resign at this late date, at this point?
So the person who resigned today got another job offer from a district closer to home.
Oh, okay.
And couldn't pass it up. And the other openings that we have, same idea. A lot of people, and actually the list right now is 3 out of 5 of them are special ed positions. So we did notice a lot of special ed resignations, including school psychologists, social workers, etc. And in looking at that, there's a shortage, obviously, of teachers in general, but on the news the other day, I don't know if you caught it, they were talking about shortage areas, and they put up the list that the state gave us, which is the general list. I mean, it has social studies on there, which I'm not seeing as a shortage area. But then after they showed the list, they spoke about special ed and how bad it is across the state. So we obviously are not the only ones seeing this. People are taking our special ed teachers, we're taking other district special ed teachers, and it's just gonna be round and round until at the end, someone's gonna be left without, and they're gonna have to figure out how to cover those classes. So it's a real problem. We're doing okay, I think, compared to other districts. In fact, we just did a survey this afternoon, kind of seeing what's still available. The state's trying to get a handle on that and maybe trying to figure out how they can help us. But it is quite a problem right now.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And that completes the superintendent's report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Pataya. Consent agenda, Ms. Petrosky.
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve consent agenda item minutes for consideration, July 8th, 2024 business meeting minutes.
Second that.
Second by Mr. Fermender. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Any board comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion.
Motion.
Add that to your motion.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn into executive session for the discussion of the transportation contract strategy. Invited into the session are Dr. Kataya and Mr. Brennan.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll go into executive session, and then we have to come back here to reconvene and adjourn. 9:21.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we're adjourned at 9:21.
10:21.
10:21.
10:21.
I'm not mistaken, that didn't.
Second.